Modern politics often uses the term witch hunt for a smear campaign. However, for 3 centuries, it was a lethal, highly organized bureaucracy. In 15th century Europe, survival was a precarious gamble. Small communities lived under the constant pressure of famine, recurring plague, and winters so harsh they could collapse local economies in a single season. When crops failed or illness struck without warning, villagers looked for a deliberate cause. This was maleficia, the belief that the devil was an active participant in human affairs, sabotaging daily life through the hands of one's own neighbors. This atmosphere of uncontrollable disaster created a void. People were desperate for answers, and religious and state institutions stepped in to provide a tangible, punishable enemy to blame for their suffering. In 1484, Pope Innocent VIII officially sanctioned the hunt for witches. This papal bull validated localized fears, giving the highest level of religious authority to the pursuit and execution of suspects. Shortly after, the Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of witches, provided the systematic instructions for the hunt. It served as a standardized manual for identifying, interrogating, and prosecuting the devil's agents. The manual claimed that women were biologically more susceptible to the devil's influence. By framing this as a spiritual and physical fact, the text gave judges across Europe justification to focus their persecutions almost exclusively on women. The Malleus Maleficarum effectively upgraded scattered, local panics into a coordinated cross-border machine. It provided the administrative tools to turn communal fear into an organized war. The trials frequently targeted independent women, widows, and midwives. Midwives were particularly vulnerable because their knowledge of medicinal herbs challenged the Church's claim to be the sole source of healing. Divine justice often served as a cover for financial gain. Laws allowed local governments to seize the land, gold, and property of anyone convicted, creating a direct incentive for high-profile accusations. Persecution became a specialized industry. In England, witchfinder generals like Matthew Hopkins charged villages massive fees for every witch they identified, turning the hunt into a profitable itinerant business. The administrative cruelty was absolute. Families often received a final ledger after an execution, billing them for the firewood, the rope, and the executioner's labor. The trials reached a massive scale because they were supported by a system that financially rewarded accusers and the state for every guilty verdict. Interrogators used excruciating physical torture to extract very specific results. The goal was to force the accused to repeat a pre-written script of demonic pacts that satisfied the court's theological requirements. This woodcut details the swimming test. The bound accused was lowered into water while officials watched. If she floated, she was proven a witch. If she sank, she was innocent, though many drowned. Courts also relied on fabricated physical evidence. Professional prickers used retractable needles to prove a suspect had a painless devil's mark, making it appear a needle entered without drawing blood. In 1692, the breakdown of legal reasoning reached a peak in Salem, Massachusetts. Here, the court abandoned the need for physical evidence entirely. Salem's judges allowed spectral evidence, which meant a person could be executed because an accuser claimed to have seen the victim's invisible ghost attacking them in a vision. These logic loops created a closed system. Once accused, the legal framework made it nearly impossible to prove innocence through any rational means. The era of mass trials came to an end as the Age of Enlightenment introduced a new standard of evidence to the judicial system. Judges began to demand physical, empirical proof that could be verified. They increasingly recognized that spiritual crimes were impossible to prove within the constraints of human law. In 1735, England's Witchcraft Act legally reclassified these claims as human fraud. This effectively stripped the accusations of their supernatural weight in the eyes of the court. Centuries later, the terrifying image of the witch has been transformed into Halloween folklore. The title has even been reclaimed as a symbol of feminist identity and nature-based spirituality. The protection against mass hysteria came from the establishment of the rule of law and the strict requirement for objective, verifiable evidence. While the specific religious laws of the 17th century are gone, the psychological vulnerabilities of a population under extreme stress remain. The witch trials stand as a warning of what happens when fear and unchecked institutional power align. History suggests that when a society feels threatened, it will continue to look for a monster to name.